This is the seventh fairy tale I write for you from the stories you're sending me. Again, if you don't know what I'm talking about, go to the pinned video on Instagram and TikTok, on YouTube. Go to the playlist Why is Love So Hard? And the first video there will give you some instructions. Today's fairy tale is titled Ted and Tina. Let's begin. Her cell phone pinged. It was a DM from a Ted, nobody she knew. She read the text and laughed. At least he's funny, she said to herself. What was she going to reply to his "let me be your cat" DM? At that moment, her cat jumped up her leg and left a small scratch in its wake. Perfect. I get enough scratches from the cat I already have, thank you, she said. But I'll let you be my date for sometime this weekend if you insist, she parried. They texted for about an hour, after which they decided to meet on a Sunday. He drove to her place, and when he arrived, he texted her. She went down to meet him at his car, and the conversation flowed easily. They went for a walk and ended up in a park. They sat on a bench and munched on some popcorn they'd bought from a vendor there. They walked some more and talked about life in general, and a few hours later, he dropped her off at her place and went home. They met again the following weekend, and it seemed that things were going well. Until later that second week, when he would disappear for hours on end and ignore her text if she sent him one. She told him plainly that his behavior is making her uncomfortable and that she'd like to receive more attention from him. The third time they met, it was with a group of his friends. At first, she thought it was a good sign that he wanted her to meet his friends, but his friends turned out to be mostly women who criticized her and sniggered at her and put her on the defensive. And Ted did nothing to stop them and nothing to change the atmosphere. After the gathering with these so-called friends, Ted took her to the supermarket to buy the ingredients for the clam pasta she had promised to cook for him. When they got to the checkout, he went to the self-checkout, and she noticed that he did not pay for several items, including the clams. When he saw her horrified expression, he laughed and said, "Well, that'll show them. They should not price things so high." She fake smiled and almost ran out of there, imagining a security guard on her tail. That was when she broke up with him. Too many red flags, one after the other. Of course, Ted's ego would not accept that Tina had ended things, so he kept on calling her every 10 days or so, which she allowed for a couple of months. But all she noticed was more lies, more cheapskate behavior, and more manipulation. So she had to block him to really end things. The end. Well, at least that's the first ending. Let's go to the second one. While he was seeing Tina, Ted had also met Sandra. Sandra was much more forgiving than Tina, and she went along with Ted's shenanigans and did not care if he stole or cheated. She said they were like Bonnie and Clyde and partners in crime. Until one day, Ted was caught stealing and was sentenced to 6 months in jail. He never saw Sandra again. As for Tina, she went back to the supermarket from which Ted had ingratiated himself of 2 kilos of clams and other items. She had taken and kept the receipt, and she'd taken note of all the items that were left unpaid for. She asked to see the store manager, who turned out to be single and looking for love. The manager, Fred was his name, showed his deep appreciation for Tina's honesty by taking her out to dinner. One dinner turned into many, and 6 months later, he asked Tina to move in with him. 2 years later, they were happily married. The end. I hope you enjoyed this fairy tale. Don't forget to like, share, and follow. Keep on sending me your stories so I can turn into fairy tales like these. I am Dada, and this is Why is Love So Hard?